Skyrim has been sold over the past 10 years at least 8 different times. Yeah, they can just keep re-releasing it. Every time Microsoft is a new for sale, they'll just go Skyrim 2. Just Skyrim games. Yeah, at least a new game. There's all this Skyrim. It was just the exact rebuild. Okay, I'm trying to get through every I figured out. Typically, I'll get something. But don't buy it also.
Okay.
No way. There it is.
Pause. Are we recording? We are. Okay.
Yeah. It was probably an XL. It's only more.
You could have it and that ticket.
Right. Is that not how that works?
Ready for your exam next week?
I've been studying, but
We'll find
I was thinking
Yeah.
a little bit.
Focusing on organic chemistry.
Is that the next one? Oh, okay.
I did finish the study guide. I told you that. It's really promising.
There's used to be Professor Holman used to have 5-hour OChem exams. It didn't matter if you were in sport either. You weren't rescheduling it, so you had to be there to take it. That was the time. Yeah. Is that your water bottle? By the way.
It's just right here.
How's the hunting? Oh, okay. All right. I just assumed it was like, it's opening day. Yeah. All right. So we finished pretty much everything that would be on the exam up to now, right? So now we're going to just keep pressing forward. But this will be stuff for later, exam-wise, right? Okay. We're going to get into Xanthara, which is what? For those of you that have done any kind of reading. Sloths and armadillos. And something else too. Some echidnas, yeah. 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 And then some weird things about them. Some of them don't have teeth, right? I mean, like dentition is a big deal in mammals that we've went over and said already, right? Like, but these guys don't even have teeth a lot of the times. So that poses a weird problem. They're part of a group that has, it's split off early into mammal development, like real early into mammal development. So there's a few things about them that are a little bit more weird than other mammals. All right, that has to do with this here. We've seen this before. Here it is again. You get continental drift of Pangaea breaking apart, and then you get Laurasia and Gondwana. And about 60 million years ago, you get this, right? Okay, all familiar? All familiar with the neotropical area, what that is, what all the other areas are called? Yeah, all right. These guys are who we're going to talk about. On the left, what is that? Armadillo. Three-banded armadillo. Armadillos, I think there's only 2 kinds that are predominantly in the US, 3- and 9-banded armadillos. And one of them carries leprosy. Well, I think they all can, but I think there's a population of them here, like Louisiana, maybe. So somewhere in the swamp.
From
Florida. There you go, just in the swamp down there. No one wants to go there And then up here, we have pilosa, which is anteaters and sloths, right? There's both 2 and 3-toed sloths. Yeah. That's surprising to some people. I don't know. Just always see them at a zoo. Both. Yeah. You may or may not know, though, that despite sloths being probably the slowest mammal on the planet, they're actually incredibly strong for their size. Now, that being said, they are still incredibly dumb. So sometimes they fall out of a tree. Yeah, they can actually. They can hold on with 1 digit, their entire body, but it doesn't change the fact that they're stupid. So they just fall out of a tree. Okay. For this, make sure it's Moodle. I forgot to change that. Make sure to read this document here. It's in the modules that are on there. So this is an introduction to Xanthara. And it's going to tell you a little bit about sloths, anteaters, armadillos, so forth. Make sure to read that. There's some other readings that are on Canvas. I don't know that you've read them yet. Some of them have said assigned readings. Some of them have said optional readings. We're going to talk about all those a little bit later. I want to get some distance between some things and then kind of go back to it and revisit it and make sure that you're actually remembering things and not just memorizing things. Just, looking at you, Sean. You're the one that's looking at me. So, okay. What does Xanthara stand for? Strange joints or foreign joints? Look at what's going on here. What is all of this? This is part of their vertebrae, but it looks very strange in that here is the spinous process, right? And there should be a transverse foramen going across the side, is what it's called, where you have what are called post-root ganglia coming out the transverse side of either vertebrae that are there. And it's like usually a nice little hole, but these guys just have like this notch that's right there. And this is like totally irregular shaped. It's much different from like this porcupine that's here or the cat that's there, for example. It's just like, I don't know, just take a look at this when you can next and take a look at this compared to what's going on here. It's likely, I mean, obviously we can't know, but it's likely that they are derived from extremely strong mammals that would owe to the many extinct species in this order, particularly right like before the Pleistocene happened and during the Great American Interchange, where you have stuff going north and south and so on. You guys aware that there's like a giant sloth and giant, right? So these things are, so big that like, how big are they then? Big. How big is big? Is big like? Yeah. It's like a little bug, VW or a Mini Cooper or something. Around, 10 to 12 feet tall or so. They were gigantic.
The total body is 6 meters and 20 feet.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Okay, yeah, that one species. Yeah. So giant. Obviously, those don't exist anymore due to the Pleistocene. But, well.
Sorry.
He was a nice guy. I'm sad he's gone in one way, but also Bigfoot, no. Right? We're not doing one of those. The Bigfoot nonsense. That's what it reminded me of. Pangolin, you know what a pangolin is? Pangolin is what's often called a scaly anteater. It's not a part of this group though, right? It is an anteater, like it does eat ants, right? So if you just want to use that term, then yes, but it's not a part of this group at all. We'll talk more about pangolins later, but pangolins are the most trafficked animal on the planet. They're easily the most threatened by just, I don't know, Eastern medicine use and so forth.
Isn't it for their
It's for a lot of things. Scales, their meat, eyes. Yeah, their scales are particularly prized, but they're taken for meat and eyes and everything else too. They're just trafficked highly into China. Other Southeast Asia countries too, but it's predominantly China. All right, aardvarks aren't a part of this either. Here is, let me move this. Maybe. There. A rendition of Megalonyx, how big it would be. Why do you think these guys are extinct? Partly we know because of the Pleistocene. Another idea is overkill hypothesis, which is what exactly? Humans overhunting them, which we definitely did to bison, right? Like that's, I mean, we discussed that's why they're pretty much, we're almost wiped out. Why overhunt these guys though? Because imagine how we would have had to do it when humans were around with them. Pleistocene 10, 11,000 years ago. So we definitely were here, right? For sure. And you know, we had already spread across the whole globe at that point. So it was not a problem for us in that way. But 11,000 years ago, you know, we didn't have like the Bronze Age swords or metallurgy or anything. None of that existed. So what'd you have? A spear and likely a bow, right? That's pretty much it. And a rock. And the ability to run longer than anything else. That's pretty much all you had. Say what? Oh yeah, you would have had an atlatl. That's true. I just forget those existed. Yeah, you definitely would have had one. Say what?
Maybe a swing.
Maybe. It's essentially an atlatl, just with it's like slinging a spear, essentially, right? All right. These were spread across the entire near Arctic. And why would humans go for them, though? What about them would make them a desirable target?
Large pelts.
Okay, large pelts would be a huge deal, right? Because if we're living in the near Arctic up here and it's wintertime, without pelts at that time, we're kind of screwed, right? So, okay. Large pelts for one, that's definitely good. What's another one? Claws for tools, meat, and all of that are resources that are definitely usable that we would use. Why would you still go for this animal though if it was relatively large and therefore dangerous? It's slow. So it's likely that it's faster. It was probably faster than we're going to think sloths are right now, right? Almost for sure. But relatively speaking, compared to other prey they would be hunting, it's kind of slow, especially when you take into consideration all the resources you get from it after that, right? And so it becomes suddenly hugely beneficial, not just for meat, because I mean, you can always use that, but all the tools and stuff and the clothing you can get from it that probably you could split into like 4 or 5 people for one pelt, right? And then you suddenly enter like a human overkill hypothesis where you don't necessarily need the meat. I mean, we can always eat it and store it and stuff. And we figured out salting meat a long time ago and like drying it over fire. We figured that out a long time ago. So, right, we knew how to preserve food and such. but you're not necessarily killing it just for that, right? You're killing it for every other resource, which will play into it. This is a nice little excerpt from Wikipedia. There's like an abstract giving you what are weird about some of them. Essentially being that, okay, they broke off early in mammal evolution. Their vertebrae are weird. Many of them, not all of them, but many of them have no teeth. Unlike a lot of mammals that aren't cetaceans, for example, they still retain abdominal testicles instead of it being dropping down into a scrotum. And then some of their limb bone structures are relatively different. As well, they don't really have any need for color vision for the most part, because what are they eating? Either this, like if it's an anteater and stuff, it's just going to eat ants, termites, all that kind of thing. They don't need to see what color it is. It's not important at all, right? And then if it's a sloth, any idea what sloths eat? So what? I thought somebody said something. Sorry. Just take a wild guess. Leaves and some fruit that'll be there, right? So do they really need to see what color it is? No, not really. They're not searching for ripe fruit or anything like that. And sloths in particular don't have that many natural predators. There are a few, right? Like a harpy eagle, for example, will take out a sloth quickly. But if you don't have a whole lot of need, then there's no reason for selection to force you into that. Okay, this will be, this is on Canvas as well. This is essentially a one-page double-spaced paper. Someone I updated the one on Canvas, but not this one. I can't remember to do both, apparently. You should shame me. Shame.
Go ahead and send it to Dave too.
I'm sure he would laugh about it, yeah. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I updated the date here. Let me just pull it up for the actual one that's on there. Here it is. October 24th. That's next Friday. I'll get all the elk stuff done this weekend too, which shouldn't be that hard. I'm getting caught up with things slowly. 25 credits is a lot. But this is just one-page double space generalized summary assignment on what Xanthara is. Do me a favor. When you put your name and date on it, use the header. Don't just write justify it. Put it in the header. Okay. One thing I will caution you about, though, how many of you have had to write essays that are one page? Okay. Writing a one-page double-space essay is harder than it seems. For those of you that have written one, what actually happens every time? It's like 3 pages, or page and a half, 2 pages, and then you're just like, okay, right? And so part of the challenge is trying to figure out exactly what you want to include in it or not. I don't think it'll be that hard for you guys at all, but say what? Yeah. Like uploading them or something? Or viewing them, rather? Where's my other? I need my actual Xanthara. slides rather than just the introduction. Like spider monkeys or something? Like spider monkeys or some such?
No, you're talking about Spider-Man.
Oh,
Because there's the armadillo that's on the Mammalogy that you posted.
uh-huh.
Oh, yes, armadillo from Rango. We're like, oh, yeah, what's his name? His name is Cecile. And then the person who voices him is Doc Ock.
Oh,
That's where that.
I don't think I've seen Rango since it came out. When was that?
It's so good.
2010 or something?
Yeah.
It's something like that. Yeah, it's been a while. All right. Also, I want to talk about this next time. Look at this guy. Adorable. Not a stoat. Close. Same family, of course, obviously. It's ferret. What kind of ferret? It's a black-footed ferret. It's right there. Read this. I want to talk about this next time on Friday. Okay. Look up some stuff about a black-footed ferret. Tell me what you could find. If you can find one, yeah, go for it. I don't know where you're going to find one around here, but you know, if you can find one, definitely. Yeah. It's going to be like that bison in Yellowstone the one time.
Sounds like something
Well, that bison had to get euthanized too, because I heard one accepted him where he's gone. He got taken and then, yeah. Well, yeah. Oh. Yeah, they would, but still, it's no, they don't. No, that's not true. It's not in that folder. It's in my folder at home. Thank you. It's a wonderful kitten folder. Also a mammal. Oh, that's actually awesome. Your hype man. Okay. Terrible movie. Don't watch it. That's a trick. I was made to watch that. No, but I was still made to watch it. And then what you should watch though is Thanksgiving. Incredible movie. Have you seen it?
I haven't seen it.
You've seen it though, Charlie? Incredible movie. It's great. All right. So this is a little bit of Xanthara and then getting into Aphrotheria as well. I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time with Xanthara. Armadillos are fine. Sloths are fine. But not really. Are you? Is anybody in here like a super fan of sloths and or armadillos?
Well, I like gators. I like one armadillo in particular, and that is pickles, that very full food.
Okay, that's one thing. But just as a whole, are you like a big fan of armadillos?
They're animals, so yes.
Yeah, I mean, as far as them being animals, and they're cool, but like, yeah, I'd rather get into Aphrotheria than get into bats. Bats are cool. Bats are real cool. Not Batman. Although I could insert some Batman memes if you want.
I always love.
We're starting to get into the age of that now that baby boomers are starting to head out, and you got millennials getting into positions. You just insert memes into presentations. Well, all right. This is at the British National History Museum. At the British National History Museum, you may or may not know there's looted things from every part of the world there, because that's what Britain did, colonialism and all. Slowly, they've actually been returning things to where it should be. Yeah, this is not one of them. Yeah, I mean, they still have most things. They're just kind of slowly allowing it to go. You should, one thing which is interesting to watch if you want to hear a British personality. One time someone was asked, don't you think we should return those? And they're like, they said something along the lines of this, paraphrasing, here in Britain, we can know how to properly take care of it. So we will keep it here. And you were just like, whoa, like it's still going strong after 400 years of colonialism, huh? Like, Jesus Christ. That's not what I would say in response to that. Well, it was just, it was off the rails, not the kind of comment you want to make. All right. This will give you an idea of how big he actually was, or well, she maybe. Why do these animals go extinct? One thing that is becoming obvious at this point probably is the larger the animal, what?
More resources and
Okay, yeah. So just the more resources and nutrients they need. That also means generally it takes longer for them to grow, which also means it takes longer for them to reach sexual maturity. So that is all encompassing, right? It's like the cyclical thing that goes around. As a result of that, though, you end up with large animals like this or elephants or something that have long lifespans, but also then have a slow replenishment or reproduction rate, right? So they are what would be called a K-selected species, right? You remember R in K selection? Okay, so this is K selection then. They're nowhere near carrying capacity, and the chances that they actually get to carrying capacity is like minimal, just because it takes so long. Unless it's something like, us, and we've altered our entire survivorship curve by science and medicine, right? Humans would be a type 2 survivorship curve, but we've altered it to a type 3 just by the invention of science and modern medicine, which is wild. Okay. Yeah. All right. This is going to get into Aphrotheria a bit, and we're going to look at certain things that are relatively cool, I think. Elephant shrews, for example, not a shrew, not an elephant, it's not a shrew. It's part of Aphrotheria. Common names are a pain in the ass, of course. And since common names are a pain in the ass, you get things like, where do I keep wanting to put this? It's like never in a good spot. You get things like this that's called an elephant shrew, and it's neither it's not related to either, right? Well, all right, it's related. Everything's related to something. So like, yeah, all right. You know what I mean, right? Yeah. Okay. All right, now I'm in Zoom. I'm having a grand old time. All right. About 30 million years ago, you get that part of the Mediterranean Sea that's spilling over, and it hasn't quite made like the Suez Canal yet, if you know where I'm talking about, into the Red Sea. And we have part of the ocean, though, from, you remember the 50 million years ago from when we talked about cetaceans, you still have this ocean that's there. That's starting to recede, and you're starting to get the landmass that you have now. Afrotheria is particularly interesting, not just because Africa is an enormous continent, and not even because a lot of it has been isolated, but it's the fact that not only has it been isolated, Africa pretty much did not have to deal with the Pleistocene extinction, right? So here, South America, Europe, Asia, all had to deal with the Pleistocene extinction, and that really didn't hit in Africa. So a lot of the things that were there then are still there now. Okay. Okay, so I know only one of you have taken evolution. When I say monophyletic clade or paraphyletic clade, are you good with what that means? Do you know how to distinguish the difference between a monophyletic and a paraphyletic clade and so forth, or no? Maybe partially. Okay. All right, let's start from the bottom then, because this is something you're going to have to, like, as we get further into bigger orders and families and stuff, it's going to become much more apparent. D is what? It's the common ancestor of everything that is up displayed on here, right? So whatever that may be, right? I mean, if you want, you could call it Luca if we're looking at the entire evolutionary tree, right? But let's just say this is mammals, then this is the last common ancestor for mammals, or the last common ancestor for this group before you get into Afrotheria, right? Right. C is what? Okay. Right. Okay. It's a split off. And this would be a monophyletic clade right here. It's split off from the common ancestor, and nothing is coming after it. Everything that's there is labeled, and nothing perpetuates on from it. B, however, is a paraphyletic clade, right? So within B, we have all these whatever species, family, genre that are there, but also it splits off and you have another branch of the tree, which is A. Therefore, it's not monophyletic. It's not mono. There's two things in there, so it can't be mono, right? Therefore, it's paraphyletic. A, on the other hand, is this paraphyletic or monophyletic? It's monophyletic, right? So you can have something that's monophyletic inside of a paraphyletic tree, but not the other way around, right? Like it would not make sense the other way around. Birds are a monophyletic tree in reptiles, right? For example. Okay. When we say convergent evolution, how much, I don't know, how much of that have you guys gotten? Like, it was definitely brought up in Bio 1 and 2 probably at some point. Maybe in ecology. And then that was it. Were they glanced over both? It probably definitely glanced over a lot in Bio 1 and 2, almost for sure. Did you spend a decent amount of time on it in ecology? Do you feel like you know what this actually is? Like, if I asked you to explain it in a long answer form on a test, could you do it? One yes, one no. Others? Probably. So that's I'm going to get like one topic sentence and BS my way through that topic sentence. Is what that is. Yeah. Okay. That's not a confident, you know what it is. I've been that undergrad. Nick, do you feel like you know what this actually is? Okay. So, all right. Before we even get any further, then, let's make sure that we understand what these things are, right? Because otherwise it becomes confusing and you don't really get the relevance of what things are, right? And that's no good. All right. Gage, you think you kind of understand. Explain just a general overview of what it is.
When two lineages develop similar traits.
Two lineages develop similar traits.
So it'd be like birds and bats, where they both develop wings, but they're not related from each other.
Okay, they're not related from each other, and there's other important markers in there. They don't have to be geologically separated. Yeah, that's not necessary. I mean, it's often the case, but it's not a requirement.
They have similar environmental pressures.
That would have to be the case for that to happen, right? Yeah, so they will develop a similar trait, could be in the same area, doesn't have to be, to exploit an available niche, however you want to say it, that is available in that particular ecosystem. And how do I want to say it without getting too into the weeds? On top of all of that, it's a functional use of something, right? Because you can evolve a lot of things, and many things and traits have evolved that have just been kind of neutral, right? It's not exactly beneficial. And it's a trait that has evolved that is so important usually that it becomes a defining feature of everything after it, in a way, right? So you have some animal, we'll say the common ancestor of the bats. We'll just use that because it's the easiest thing, and you understand what I'm saying. That evolves, and it's so good that you have 1/3 of existing mammals then going that route because it's so good, right? Because bats evolved flight, what do you have that's available to them? You have a lot of different food sources that are available that would be hard for other mammals per se to get to, right? Like, okay, there's fruit bats, right? That can get huge. They can get huge because the fruit they're eating, tropical fruit, has a huge amount of sugar in it, right? Like a lot of sugar, a bunch of fructose. So it supports a larger body mass. Then you have a lot of bats that are small, like the Mammalogy bats of Idaho, like the small brown bat and so on, that are only a couple of ounces. They're tiny, but they'll eat insects in mass, right? So like there's bats here in Pocatello that fly around, and they're awesome, right? If you're lucky enough to live next to where a bat colony is, you can walk outside in the middle of like August and not get eaten alive by mosquitoes, right? Because the bats are taking care of it, like where you're at, which is just great. It's great. And then other bats, I'm sure everyone's heard of a vampire bat, yeah? Right? And they just drink cow blood, essentially, right? And where do they evolve? Are they just like hanging out in the middle of North America? No, because it's just prairies, right? So they're Africa, South America, right? Where you have actual bovidae livestock being. Okay, so to come back around and in short, when you think of convergent evolution, a similar trait that is evolved in one group of animals as another, but they do not have the same selection pressure, Okay. But it evolved such that this entire group now is filling a niche that was not available to be, or that was available to be exploited, but had not yet been exploited.
Would that then be like the first into land?
Yeah. Or the return back into the ocean for cetaceans, right? Because now you have an entire, well, ocean sphere, an ecosystem that is not exploited for mammals at all, especially individuals that are highly intelligent, right? So in the ocean, out of all the animals you can think of in the ocean, what is highly intelligent? Toothed whales, mammals, and octopus. That's pretty much it, right? Like, yeah, cephalopods, and that's all, right? Everything else, it was just like free reign for mammals to then just take that open spot, right? And so now they're there. Mhm. Just like a wild one or something?
Yeah, you go out diving every day, and like octopus recognize them.
Yeah.
So for like a solid
Yeah, and they just like kind of hung out in the water and stuff. Yeah, that seems fun. All right. What is Afrotheria? Right. Yes. Nailed it. Done. Lecture over. Close up shop. Read this here. This is telling you the union of different agencies coming together. Has anyone ever heard of like Defenders of Wildlife or whatever? No, they're kind of a big deal group in conservation efforts and so forth. As far as the science goes, sometimes they get a little overzealous, right? Like in wolf conservation, they're a big part of wolf conservation, and like wolves are my favorite animals, of course. I've said that, and you should be able to have wolves in the wild, but they're kind of like just glorifying everything and going off the deep end, and it's like, okay, wolves don't actually do that, right? Or like you're going like they're like they never eat livestock. Well, that's not true, right? They will. It's not common, but you know, so well, yeah. But they do. All right. As far as Afrotheres, we have 7 different types. Sea cows are sirens. Charlie's favorite. Elephants, hyraxes, which are really interesting. They're a weird looking mix of, this looks like a rodent. What is this? Tenorix, which are also very interesting. Looking at things like hedgehogs and so forth. Golden moles, elephant shrews, and aardvarks. What we'll do, okay, we have an exam, and then we're off the following lab day. Yes. Probably next Friday, though, then we take out some of the specimens we have in here and just like we're spend the whole time going through what they are, kind of thing. Okay. Am I out of time? I'm already out of time. My watch correct? I got 2 minutes. All right. This means almost of course it's in the way again. I'm trolling myself. Penungulata means almost ungulates. We're down here, and look at these digits. You think they're even or odd-toed? They're odd-toed. They're not, I mean, they're not in Artiodactyla, right? So we're not saying they're an even or an odd-toed ungulate, but they're odd-toed. You should be able to look at their feet and kind of get some kind of recognition of what they are. Within this branch, we're going to look at hyraxes, some Sirenia, like dugongs and manatees and such, and then some elephants, the 3 major species of elephants, which is 2 African elephants, 1 Asian elephant, right? Again, which we did not figure out the 2 species of African elephant till 20, yeah, I was going to say 2010 to 15 or so, somewhere in there. So yeah, did you look it up? And yeah, 2013.
Like in 2013.
Yeah, I was already out of high school. Oh my God. I'm old. That's almost been 20 years. All right. I guess we stop there and then we'll pick up on all of this next time. Look forward to pulling out a bunch of pocket gophers out of there. Also, can't promise they're not covered in some arsenic. So, you know, standard procedure. I think there are some hyrax at the zoo.
I'm Googling photos. They're so funny.
Yeah.